Good morning, and I can't tell you how excited I am. Michele Dufresne is with us. She's a former literacy specialist, and so she's got genuine, honest to God teaching experience. But in addition to that, she's done so many different things. I'm going to let her tell you about that in a moment. But she's written a best-selling book with Jan Richardson. She's co-authored a number of books, and she has a collection from New Pioneer Valley books that she's going to talk about. So lots to talk about. So I'm going to shut up, let you start talking about a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into some of our talking points. So take it away.
Hi. So yeah, my early teaching, I was a third grade teacher, fourth grade teacher, and then a first grade teacher. And then later on, I went back to the University of Massachusetts and got my doctorate. And while I was working on that, I became a reading coordinator, where I was working at an early primary school in South Hadley, Massachusetts, coaching teachers and also playing the role of the remedial reading teacher. And at that point, I got involved in reading recovery. I trained with Irene Fountas at Lesley University as a reading recovery teacher leader.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you here for a moment and say, when you told me that, my face turned green within. That's so big. Okay, yeah. Go on. Sorry.
Yes. It was amazing to work with Irene. She is everything you can imagine. I learned so much from her. I learned so much from the reading recovery trainers that she brought in to work with us. I had an opportunity several times to work with Mari Clay, which is my idol personally. I think the work of Mari Clay just totally just opened up. I mean, here I was working on my doctorate. I got my was working on my dissertation. I thought I knew so much about teaching reading until I got involved in reading recovery. So I did that for a long time. But when I was working in reading recovery, we never had enough books for the kiddos that we were working with. They need a new book every day, and the quality of the books, was a big mix. And I started writing my own stories, and I would be handing them out to the teachers that I was visiting. And they said to me, "Oh, Michele, couldn't you make these into some real books? Because it's a lot of work to, type these up and make them." And so we made 10 books. They were black and white photographs. We took pictures of our family and friends, my little dog, Gabby, that I had. And oh my gosh, the teachers just loved these books. And so we just started doing more. It just kind of turned into a thing. All the time I kept trying to keep doing my reading recovery. I was also still the coordinator for the reading coordinator. I was juggling a lot. And about 10 years ago, I did retire from being in schools and doing reading recovery. And I just kind of work full-time now, writing, but also, some work training teachers, presenting at LitCon this year with Jan Richardson and Karen Kanjemi. So just keeping that work going. People say, when am I going to really retire? And I just can't imagine it. I love what I'm doing.
There's a lot of that going around, I guarantee you. So I'm going to get into the first talking point. You hinted at LitCon, so could you just talk a little more about LitCon and do yourself a little promotion there for your sessions?
LitCon is absolutely my favorite literacy conference. I just think it's a phenomenal conference. The speakers are just so outstanding. So I'm actually presenting twice. One session is called Bridging Whole to Small Group Instruction, and that's on Sunday, January 29th. I'm presenting with Jan Richardson and Karen Kanjemi, my two favorite amazing people to work with in the whole world. The session is going to be kind of laser focused in on shared reading and guided reading and the relationship that you want to build between the two. I think sometimes our different literacy events stand as islands in themselves, and how you really want to connect them, how the whole group instruction can then feed into your small group instruction. So that's one session. And then the other one is probably going to be a pretty hot topic. It's called Systematic Word Study and Phonics During Guided Reading. And, you know, we believe strongly that phonics belongs in your guided reading lessons daily. And we're really going to be talking about how you do that, how you make sure it's systematic, how you really work it to make sure that it's carrying over and being applied. So those are our sessions, again, with Karen and Jan.
And I'm just going to echo what you just said, making sure that it's carried over and applied. If the kids don't internalize the strategies that you're teaching them, then you're not really doing much. But if the kids do internalize those strategies, then, oh my gosh, lots of great things happen. So that said, let's start talking about some of your books. And I'm going to kind of lump two of them together. The Next Step Forward in Word Study and Phonics, and Word Solvers, which is one of your older books. So can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I've been interested in how children develop their decoding and encoding skills pretty much my whole educational career. And early on, I wrote the Word Solver book for Heinemann, and I was working in reading recovery, but I was also working with classroom teachers, and some of the work that we were learning in reading recovery, I knew was applying well into the classrooms. And it's a little book about really kind of infusing more hands-on phonics work into the classroom. A lot of the classroom teachers were using, worksheets to teach phonics. And this is about how you can really use, especially magnetic letters, really powerfully in the classroom. The book that I did, The Next Step Forward in Word Study and Phonics with Jan Richardson, builds really on her yellow book that everybody calls The Next Step Forward in Guided Reading. And if you're familiar with her framework, part of her framework is a word study part of the lesson. What we did is we really fleshed that out, and we actually provide teachers with short word study lessons that they can use. So we of course think it's really important to assess students and not just put them on some kind of a track. You assess and you think about what their needs are, but we do match it up with text, and then teachers can really open up the book and utilize, a systematic sequence of word study lessons to be used with their guided reading lessons. So that's what that book's about.
That sounds like you wouldn't have to have a copy of it.
Yeah, I got it sitting right here. Here it is.
Okay,
yeah.
So folks, there'll be a link to that, and for everybody, I just have an idea. I know my followers, and my guess is that a lot of ears popped open just then, and that's the book, and there'll be a link to it. Let's change our view here for a second and go on to the next thing is tell us about some success stories, because and tell us about, gosh, kids really did learn how to apply phonics when you taught them, and gosh, they really did understand what you read after you were done teaching. And also, I think all of us are quite aware that there's been a spate of things on social media, a lot of negativity, and a lot of claims that are simply not true, like the thought that we don't teach phonics. Oh, give me a break. Hold your book up. No, don't hold your book up again. But gosh, we kind of do. So tell us about your successes, and tell us about your views about some of the new criticism that's come about.
Yeah. Well, I am pretty passionate about guided reading. I feel like there's some criticism out there saying we shouldn't teach guided reading, which seems very strange to me. Of course, we know that small group targeted instruction is the most powerful way to teach children. I think that they can learn a lot in a whole class situation, whole group, but we really need to pull children together and make sure that they're getting the right kind of instruction. And, what we've seen over the years, I've been writing, all these books, probably the most popular books that I've written are about my dogs, Bella and Rosie, these two little white Bichons that are just the love of our lives. Well, in my little stories, they talk to each other, and they have like adventures that are very similar to what a 6 and a 7-year-old would have. And I get letters all the time from kids. Well, no, I should say I don't get letters. Bella and Rosie get letters, questions from kids. There was just on a Twitter feed the other day that a student has written to the Macy's Day Parade requesting that they add Bella and Rosie to the parade because she loves
so cool.
Student loves Bella and Rosie so much. So maybe sometime you'll see Bella and Rosie at the Macy's Day Parade. And so it's really sad to hear about places where they're starting to say, oh, you can't use your leveled readers. You can only use decodable readers. I mean, I feel like this is Groundhog Day. We went through this under No Child Left Behind, where I was working in Massachusetts. We had really strong implementation of reading recovery. We had some really high poverty districts starting to really train their teachers in guided reading, and their scores were going up. Now, they weren't perfect scores, but we could see the progress that they were making. And the other thing that changed is we saw teachers and kids so happy. They felt like they were readers. Reading First came along. There was a huge push to implement phonics and basal programs instead of guided reading. A whole bunch of these districts, especially the higher poverty ones, gave up their reading recovery teachers and implemented, some other reading programs. And what did we see? Scores went down. It was very sad. I mean, scores went down. So here we are again. We definitely see that children are, struggling after not being in school. A lot of kids were not in school. So it is true, scores have gone down. But blaming it on balanced literacy, it just seems just wrong. And what I'm afraid of, it's going to take a few years, and then this whole pendulum is going to swing. What I would like to do is kind of find some common ground. I think, Sam, you talk about that a lot, some common ground that we have. And in fact, I've actually been working on some decodable readers. I have a whole new collection from Pioneer Valley Books. I'm really proud of them. I think they're beautiful. And I think they set that balance that we're looking for, where the books have more opportunities for decoding than my other leveled books. And so you could teach a short A or a short U sound or a blend or a digraph and find more words in the story for the children to practice decoding. But the thing that we still need to remember is books should be delightful. They should be meaningful. They should tell a story. They should be something the child wants to read again and again. And we've got to strike that balance, or we're going to have children really checked out again. And, I think that the kids that suffer are the kids that are at the, the ones that have the most struggles in their life. So I passionately believe that we have to be fighting against what I think is really a media blast at us, not what really the researchers are saying, and not lose sight of the importance of the work that we're doing and not get discouraged.
Okay. Well, I'll get on my soapbox just very briefly. I've got a blog coming up in Evan Robb that will detail all of the Robb Review that will detail all this, but exactly what you're saying. The research around balanced literacy does not show it didn't work. it did, okay, there's some kids it didn't help, but there's a lot of research that says it did help. My own experience is very similar to yours. When my district dropped doing Calkins workshop and went to a very famous Basel, well known for all of its decodable books, the scores tanked, and it took years to undo. And until that point, that building was the best building in the state in terms of a building with 90% free lunch and still making scores that earned it a national award at the time. So, and I guess the other thing is, look at England. England's been doing this kind of thing for, gosh, 10 years, and kind of tepid results. The big cures have never materialized. People in Australia are reporting that kids, after 4 or 5 years of the direct synthetic phonics, still aren't progressing. Now, there are many that do progress, and there are many that need. So, and I think your point is well taken, that the real solution, I think, is going to be both, that we need to draw from both. And what I want to say is that I'm seeing a lot more flexibility of thinking and a lot more adaptations coming from the balanced literacy side than I see from the media-based SOR side. The media-based SOR side just seems to have entrenched themselves and decided my way or the highway. And I think you're quite correct that what's going to happen if we proceed down their route, we're going to be England. We're going to have these tepid results, and we will have a lot of expensive programs in place and still need all that extra help anyway. So thank you for letting me be on my soapbox for a moment. Okay, the final thing here is, with all that said, any final thoughts?
Well, I think that, let's see, my final thoughts. Well, I know that there's a lot of teachers out there that are feeling discouraged, had felt the power of the work that they're doing. And I think that we can't let the media drive our educational decisions. And we have to keep, when it's brought to our attention, say we're open to learning new things, but let's look at the research and see what the research really says. Because I think that this, often when you say, oh, so there's research behind that, what is it? And then you go to look at it and it's just somebody else saying that this works, and it's not actual research. And the other thing that I think is important to remember is there's the research on, like how the brain works. And, there are these experimental studies, but very few of them really have looked at the implementation into the classroom and what that means. And so we have to be really careful that we don't jump from some study that had 100 adult readers and how they decoded words and think that that applies to the teaching of first graders. And so that's a little caveat. And I guess those are my final thoughts. And definitely check out the Pioneer Valley Books new phonics storybooks if you are looking to try some decodable books that we think are going to work really well.
Okay, and speaking of some definitely's, the books that you just showed us are on the way to my library, and I'll definitely be in taking a Christmas break here. But when I get back to teaching, I'll be using some of your books, and I'll be finding all about your little dogs and everything. So, wow. Okay. Good. Well, thank you so much. There's one last tradition in a Bomarito interview, and that is the final goodbye Zoom wave. So, bye. And there we are. Thank you so much for doing this. Bye-bye.